Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Raymond Yeung. Here are tonight's top stories. 2 urban sites have reportedly been picked for transitional housing to make the scheme more attractive. Hong Kong stocks leap to an 11-month high as trading opens in the year of the rabbit. And Israeli troops killed 9 Palestinians in a raid on a refugee camp. The government is believed to have chosen 2 urban sites, including one in Kai Tak, for its light public housing program. Kai Tak is among the city's most prestigious neighborhoods, but a town planner says building transitional homes in the district can achieve a good housing mix. Janice Low reports.
In his maiden policy address, the chief executive outlined a plan to shorten the waiting period for public housing by a quarter to 4.5 years through the Light Public Housing, or LPH scheme. So far, the government has chosen 4 sites for the transitional homes. But their attraction remains questionable as they are all in remote areas. Sources refute that the Housing Bureau has now picked 2 urban sites. One of them is less than a 10-minute walk from Kai Tak Station, which is in one of the most exclusive and expensive neighborhoods. But a town planner said a housing mix can be achieved to provide homes for all groups.
In a community, we share the facilities, so it's not a bad thing to have a light public housing in Kai Tak. We may consider that there will be some noise from those who brought expensive private housing over there. We may put a garden in between, or we may put a shopping mall or a market between these housings so people can enjoy those public services together, but not make a very sharp contrast between these residents or between these residential units.
Legislative councillors and housing authority members will visit the site and a show house of a LPH unit next week. The other site is an outdoor car park on Sheung-on Street in Chai Wan. It's near the first transitional housing built using module integrated construction. It takes 10 to 15 minutes on foot to reach Chai Wan Station. In an article in the Ta Kung Pao newspaper, Deputy Financial Secretary Michael Wong wrote that the Housing Bureau will provide details soon. Janice Low, HKIBC.
An air, land and sea search is underway for an off-duty firefighter who went fishing on an outlying island yesterday. Chan Kam Fai was last seen leaving his home in Hong Kong. The 30-year-old was wearing a black jacket and blue trousers, while carrying a white trolley with his fishing gear. Chan's family said he went to Po Toi Island to fish, but never returned home. Officers from the Marine Police and the Government Flying Service have been deployed to the remote island in a bid to find the man. The New People's Party says Financial Secretary Paul Chan should consider boosting the economy through long-term fiscal measures. Chan has projected a $100 billion deficit in the current financial year.
The government needs to calculate very carefully over the next 20 years the amount of funding required for infrastructure, whether our economy has the capacity to cope with it. Because with so many projects taking place at the same time, that would push up construction costs, labor costs, project management costs, whether we have sufficient resources for it other than money, and also to set the priorities.
Ip urged the government to consider increasing its revenue by raising the football betting duty by 30% to 80%. This is because football betting has surged threefold in the past decade and exceeded that of horse racing in 2019. Ip added that the double stamp duty should be scrapped and the stamp duty for stocks lowered to 0.1%. Hong Kong's COVID infections have risen for the second consecutive day. There were 2,401 new cases, up 21% from the recent low on Tuesday. only 64 of them were imported. Another 28 patients died from COVID. Separately, leading government advisor Yeung suggested that between March and April might be a good time to end the mask mandate. But the microbiologist conceded that COVID will never disappear, and vulnerable groups may have to go for booster vaccines before winter. Overseas, Israeli troops have killed at least 9 Palestinians, including an elderly woman, in a raid in the occupied West Bank. 12 other Palestinians were wounded in clashes with Israeli commandos in a refugee camp in Jenin. A children's ward in a hospital was hit by tear gas, and ambulances were unable to move freely. Israel says special forces were sent to Jenin to detain people whom it accused of carrying out and planning attacks. The Islamic Jihad group confirmed that its members clashed with the Israelis. The death toll was the highest in the recent Israeli crackdown in the West Bank. Australia Day has been marked across the country with rallies in support of its Indigenous citizens. A referendum will be held this year to put the record straight.
The first part of that is in recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander islanders as Australia's First Peoples. That's where recognition comes in. And it is something missing from our nation's birth certificate. It's missing from our Constitution. And I say this, if not now, when? If not now, when will this change occur?
The Prime Minister's words failed to impress many Australians. They marched in towns and cities demanding better treatment for Aboriginals. There have been calls to change the name of the holiday to Invasion Day to mark the anniversary of a British fleet entering Sydney Harbour in 1788. Many also want the holiday to be scrapped altogether, noting that the arrival of the British was a dark day for the Indigenous peoples, who have been in Australia for 60,000 years. Russia has warned that it will destroy Western tanks sent to Ukraine, but analysts believe the advanced weaponry can help Kyiv.
It gives them an offensive, mechanized, armored punching force that can carry out offensive, create penetrations in the Russians' lines, and that also potentially can produce surprise and shock. And surprise and shock for a defender can be a really powerful thing.
Ukraine's persistence paid off, with the United States finally agreeing to supply 31 M1 Abrams battle tanks. Germany also ended months of resistance and will provide 14 Leopard tanks. Other European countries will be allowed to supply Ukraine with German-made tanks. Ukraine wants the weaponry to be delivered quickly and is now demanding long-range missiles and fighter jets from the West. The most severe winter in Afghanistan in 15 years has been blamed for the deaths of at least 160 people. Temperatures plunged to minus 35 degrees Celsius as people in one of the world's poorest countries struggled to survive. The biting cold worsened economic conditions in Afghanistan. The country has been virtually deprived of foreign aid since the Taliban took over, when US-led NATO forces withdrew after a 20-year occupation. Some charity groups suspended services after the Taliban banned female aid workers recently. Hong Kong stocks closed at an 11-month high on the first day of trading in the Year of the Rabbit. There was an upbeat note as more companies seek to raise funds in the city. Chloe Fong reports.
The gong was struck to signal the resumption of trading after the Lunar New Year break. The live ceremony, the first in 3 years, conducted by stock market operator Hong Kong Exchanges and Clearing, concluded with a line dance.
今年我哋嘅股票市場一定吐氣揚眉，
Financial Secretary Po Chen expressed confidence that the city's money markets will leap in the year of the rabbit. The chief executive of Hong Kong Exchanges expects initial public offerings, or IPOs, to bounce back this year.
Before the Chinese New Year's, we saw 10 IPOs. And there's about 100 IPOs that are still waiting to be issued. So what we are hoping is that with the new global environment, with a much more healthy and optimistic view around the reopening after COVID, this should generate quite a bit of enthusiasm.
Local stocks started the Lunar New Year strongly, with the Hang Seng Index jumping 2.4% to 22,566 points, the highest in nearly 11 months, as investors played catch-up after the long weekend. Turnover was $120 billion, with nearly 90% of blue chips making gains. Tencent was one of the key drivers of the rally, surging 3.8%. The Hang Seng Tech Index jumped 4.3%, as JD.com rose 2.8% and Meituan 2.6%. Automobile shares were up a gear, with NIO soaring 13%, XPeng 10.5%, and Geely 6.9%. Film-related shares soared as cinemas were packed during the holiday. Wanxi Media climbed 10.4%, while Lingmeng Media jumped 7.3%. Chloe Fong, HKIBC.
Now let's take a look at the markets. The Hang Seng Index gained 522 points. The top 10 active stocks: Tencent picked up $15. Alibaba was up $1.20, while the Tracker Fund was up 54 cents. BYD Company was up $13.60, Ping An Insurance was up $2.60, while Hong Kong Exchanges and Clearing was up $6.60. The forex trading against the Hong Kong dollar: the euro's at 8.53, the pound sterling at 9.70, while the Australian dollar at 5.57. Over in Europe, the London FTSE is currently up by 10 points. The price of gold in Hong Kong climbed on the first trading day of the Lunar New Year. Chief Secretary Eric Chan attended a live opening ceremony organized by the Chinese Gold and Silver Exchange Society. Gold jumped to $18,088 a TEU, up nearly $200 from its close last Friday. Society President Haywood Cheung expects the precious metal to keep rising during the year, as the overall economic outlook turns positive with the reopening of the mainland border. He said the gold exchange will roll out digital products in the future. On to the weather now. Tomorrow will be fine and dry, with the temperature between 13 and 18 degrees. The mercury will fall appreciably tomorrow night. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. That's our main news for Thursday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Raymond Yeung. Thanks for watching. Good night.